Jonathan Sterling adjusted his Armani tie as he strode through the marble lobby of Sterling Tower, the 60-story Manhattan high-rise that housed his family's investment empire. At 32, he had everything a man could want: a corner office on the 55th floor, a penthouse overlooking Central Park, and a beautiful fiancée whose family owned half of the Upper East Side. His reflection in the polished elevator doors showed a man who had conquered the world, or at least the financial district of New York City. The elevator chimed and the doors slid open. Jonathan stepped forward, his mind already on the merger meeting scheduled in 20 minutes. He barely glanced up from his phone until he heard a sharp intake of breath. That sound made him freeze. He knew that sound. He had heard it 1,000 times in his dreams over the past 2 years. Evelyn. She stood in the back corner of the elevator, her green eyes wide with shock, her auburn hair shorter than he remembered, but just as beautiful. In her arms was a baby, maybe 18 months old, with dark curls and chubby cheeks. The child was sleeping peacefully against her shoulder, tiny fingers clutching the fabric of her simple blue dress. For a moment, neither of them moved. The lobby bustled behind Jonathan, but the world had narrowed to just this elevator, this woman. This impossible moment, Evelyn, he managed to say, his voice barely above a whisper. Jonathan, she replied, her face draining of color. She shifted the baby in her arms, pressing the child closer as if to shield him from view. The elevator doors began to close. Jonathan's feet moved automatically, carrying him inside even as his brain screamed warnings. The doors sealed shut with a soft whoosh, trapping them together in the small space. I should have taken the stairs, Evelyn muttered. Staring determinedly at the floor numbers above the door, Jonathan couldn't look away from her. 2 years. It had been 2 years since she had walked out of his life without explanation, without a forwarding address, without even a goodbye. He had searched for her for months, hired private investigators, called every mutual friend they had. She had vanished, like smoke. What are you doing here? He asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Visiting someone on the 32nd floor, she said curtly. Not that it's your business anymore. The elevator climbed smoothly. 10th floor? 15th floor. Jonathan noticed how carefully she angled herself away from him, how her jaw was set in that stubborn way he remembered so well. The baby stirred slightly, making a small sound, and Evelyn began to rock gently. Humming under her breath, 22nd floor. That was when it happened. The elevator lurched, a grinding sound filling the small space, and then everything stopped. The lights flickered once, twice, then settled into an eerie stillness. They were stuck, no, Evelyn whispered, her eyes darting to the control panel. No, no, no. Jonathan immediately pressed the emergency button. A crackling voice came through the speaker. Sterling Tower Emergency Services. Are you all right? We're stuck in elevator number 3, Jonathan said, his CEO voice taking over. We have a woman and an infant. How long until you can get us out? Sir, we'll have maintenance there as soon as possible. The elevator stopped between the 24th and 25th floors. It may take 2 to 3 hours to safely extract you. Evelyn made a strangled sound. The baby, disturbed by the commotion, began to whimper. 3 hours. Trapped in an elevator, with the man she had spent 2 years trying to forget. With their son. Jonathan watched as she bounced the baby gently, her face a mask of barely controlled panic. That was when he really looked at the child for the first time. Really looked. The baby had stopped crying and was now staring at Jonathan with wide, curious eyes. Dark eyes, the same shade of brown as Jonathan's own. The same shape. And on the baby's left hand as he reached for his mother's necklace, Jonathan saw it. A small birthmark, shaped like a crescent moon. Right between the thumb and forefinger, Jonathan had the same birthmark in the exact same place. The world tilted. He gripped the elevator railing to steady himself. Evelyn, he said slowly. How old is he? Don't, she warned, her voice shaking. How old is your son? He's not your concern? How old, Evelyn? She closed her eyes, a single tear sliding down her cheek. 18 months. His name is Riley. 18 months. Jonathan did the math quickly. 2 years since she left. 9 months of pregnancy. The timeline fit perfectly. He stared at the little boy at Riley and saw himself reflected back. The same stubborn chin, the same cowlick that made the hair stick up slightly on the left side, even the way the baby's eyebrows drew together in concentration as he played with his mother's necklace was eerily familiar. "He's mine," Jonathan said. It wasn't a question. Evelyn didn't answer, but the silence was confirmation enough. She sank down to the floor of the elevator, still holding Riley close, and Jonathan followed, sitting across from her with his back against the opposite wall. "Why?" The word came out broken. "Why didn't you tell me? Why did you just disappear?" "You really don't know?" Evelyn laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Or are you pretending again? Just like you pretended not to know what your father did?" Jonathan's stomach dropped. "My father? What does he have to do with this?" "Everything," she spat. "He has everything to do with it." 2 years ago, they had been so happy. Jonathan remembered it clearly. They had met at a charity gala. She had been there as a waitress, working for the catering company to pay her way through art school. He had been there because his father demanded his presence at every high society event. They had talked for hours that night, hiding in the garden while the party continued inside. She made him laugh in a way no one else could. She saw him as Jonathan, not as the sterling heir, not as a trophy or a stepping stone. They fell in love the way people do in movies, quickly and completely. For 6 months, he had been happier than he ever thought possible. He snuck away from board meetings to bring her lunch. She painted portraits of him when she thought he wasn't looking. They talked about the future, about traveling, about a life beyond the suffocating expectations of his family. Then one day she was gone. Her apartment emptied overnight. Her phone disconnected. Her friends claimed they didn't know where she was. Jonathan had been devastated, then angry, then numb. He threw himself into work, exactly as his father had always wanted. He started dating Catherine Whitmore 6 months later, the perfect match according to everyone in his social circle. "Your father came to see me," Evelyn said now, pulling Jonathan back to the present. Riley had fallen back asleep in her arms, oblivious to the tension crackling between his parents. It was a Tuesday afternoon. "I was at my studio working on a painting." He walked in like he owned the place, which he probably did since he owns half of Manhattan. "What did he say?" Jonathan's hands were clenched into fists. "Said he knew about us. Said he'd been having me investigated. He put an envelope on my table. Do you know what was inside?" She looked at him with eyes full of old pain. "A check for $2 million. And a contract." Jonathan felt sick. The contract said, "I would leave New York immediately, never contact you again, and never reveal that I was pregnant with your child. $2 million to disappear and take your problem with me." Her voice broke. "He called our baby a problem, Jonathan. He called Riley this perfect little person, a problem that needed to be solved." "I didn't know," Jonathan whispered. "I swear to you, Evelyn, I had no idea. I found out I was pregnant 3 days before your father showed up. I was terrified, but also so happy, because I thought we would figure it out together. I was going to tell you that weekend. But then Richard Sterling made it very clear that I wasn't good enough for his son, that I never would be, and that my child would never be acknowledged by your family." Riley stirred in his sleep, and Evelyn automatically adjusted her hold, her movements practiced and sure. Jonathan watched her, this woman he had loved, this mother of his child, and felt the full weight of what he had lost crushing down on him. "Did you take the money?" he asked quietly. "I ripped up the check in front of him," she said with fierce pride. "Told him I didn't want his blood money. But I did leave because I knew he was right about one thing. You would never choose me over your family, over your empire, over your duty. You proved that every time you canceled on me for a board meeting, every time you hid me from your social circle, every time you introduced me as a friend instead of your girlfriend." The words hit like physical blows because they were true. He had been ashamed of his own cowardice, but he had never been brave enough to change it. "I thought if I left, Riley would have a chance at a normal life," Evelyn continued. "Away from the Sterling name, away from the pressure and expectations. I could give him love, even if I couldn't give him wealth. I moved to Boston, Finished art school online. Got a job at a gallery. We've been happy. Then why are you back in New York? She hesitated. My mother is sick. Cancer. She's at Sloan Kettering. We've been here for 3 weeks now, and I've been so careful to avoid anywhere I might run into you. But she has a lawyer here in this building, handling her will, and I needed to sign some papers. Right. She laughed bitterly. Of all the elevators in all of Manhattan, I had to get into yours. Riley chose that moment to wake up fully. He looked around the unfamiliar elevator with confusion, then his little face crumpled, and he began to cry. Evelyn immediately started the soothing routine, but the baby was having none of it. His cries echoed in the small space, growing louder. Can I try? Jonathan asked, surprising himself. Evelyn looked at him warily. Why would you? Because he's my son, and because we're going to be stuck here for the next few hours. Please. She hesitated, then slowly extended Riley toward him. Jonathan took the baby carefully, his heart pounding. Riley was heavier than he expected, solid and real and perfect. The crying stopped for a moment as the baby studied this new person with wide, curious eyes. Hey there, Riley, Jonathan said softly. I'm sorry we haven't met before. That's my fault, not your mom's. But I'm here now. Riley reached out and grabbed Jonathan's tie, pulling it with surprising strength. Then he smiled, a huge gummy smile that made Jonathan's heart crack wide open. In that moment, holding his son for the first time, Jonathan Sterling understood exactly what he had been missing, and exactly what he was going to fight to keep. Riley seemed fascinated by Jonathan's tie, which was now thoroughly wrinkled in his small fist. The baby babbled happily, showing off 2 tiny teeth, completely unaware of the tension between the 2 adults, or the fact that they were trapped in a metal box suspended between floors. He likes you, Evelyn said quietly, a note of surprise in her voice. He's perfect, Jonathan replied, unable to take his eyes off his son. He looks just like the baby pictures my mother used to show me. Same eyes, same smile, same ridiculous hair that sticks up no matter what you do to it. A ghost of a smile crossed Evelyn's face. I tried everything. Gel, water, even a tiny baby hat. The cowlick won't be tamed. They sat in silence for a moment, the absurdity of the situation settling over them. Here they were, 2 people who had once planned a future together. Now strangers separated by secrets and time. Trapped in an elevator with the child who connected them forever. Tell me about him, Jonathan said. Tell me everything. I know I don't deserve it, but please. Evelyn pulled her knees up to her chest, watching as Riley contentedly played with Jonathan's expensive watch. He was born on March 15th at 6 in the morning. 8 pounds, 3 ounces. He came 3 weeks early, and I was terrified because I was alone. My mother was with me, but I kept thinking about how you should have been there. Jonathan winced, but said nothing. Letting her continue, he didn't cry right away. And those 30 seconds were the longest of my life. But then he wailed, and it was the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. The nurse put him on my chest, and he stopped crying and just looked at me with these big eyes. And I knew I would do anything to protect him. She paused. Even if it meant keeping him from you, what's he like? Jonathan asked, his voice rough with emotion. He's brilliant. Too smart for his own good sometimes. He started walking at 10 months and hasn't stopped moving since. He loves books, especially the ones with animals. His favorite is about a bear who can't sleep. He insists I read it every single night. Evelyn's face softened as she talked about their son. He's kind too. At his daycare, if another kid is crying, Riley brings them his favorite toy. And he's stubborn. So incredibly stubborn. He gets that from both of us, Jonathan said with a sad smile. He asks about his father sometimes, Evelyn admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. The other kids at daycare talk about their dads, and Riley doesn't understand why he doesn't have one. I told him his daddy lives far away and loves him very much, but can't be with us right now. The knife twisted deeper in Jonathan's chest. You told him I loved him, even though you thought I abandoned you both. Because despite everything, I never believed you didn't want children. I just believed you wouldn't choose them over your family's expectations. She looked at him directly. Was I wrong? Before Jonathan could answer, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen. Catherine, his fiancée. He declined the call. You're engaged, Evelyn said flatly. It wasn't a question. Yes, to Catherine Whitmore. The wedding is in 4 months. Does she know about me? I told her I had a serious relationship before we met. I didn't mention names or details. I didn't see the point since you were gone. And now? Jonathan looked at Riley, who had abandoned the watch and was now trying to grab Jonathan's nose. Now everything is different. Evelyn's phone buzzed. She checked it quickly, her face paling. My mother's nurse. She's asking where I am. I was supposed to be back an hour ago. Can you call her? Let her know you're okay? Evelyn nodded and made a quick call, explaining the situation to the nurse, assuring her mother would be fine for a few more hours. When she hung up, she looked exhausted. How sick is she? Jonathan asked gently. Stage 4. They're saying months, maybe weeks. She wanted to meet Riley before. Evelyn's voice broke. She's the only family I have. When she's gone, it'll just be me and Riley. No, Jonathan said firmly. It won't. You'll have me. If you'll let me. You say that now, trapped in an elevator, caught up in the emotion of meeting your son for the first time. But what about tomorrow? What about when you go back to your penthouse and your perfect fiancé and your board meetings? What about when your father finds out? As if summoned by her words, Jonathan's phone rang again. This time it was his father. He declined that call too. He already knows I'm stuck in this elevator, Jonathan said, reading a text message. Building security informed him. He's demanding I call him immediately, so call him now. Jonathan put his phone on silent and set it aside. For once in my life, he can wait. Evelyn stared at him in shock. Who are you and what have you done with Jonathan Sterling? Maybe I'm finally becoming the man I should have been 2 years ago? He shifted Riley to his other knee. The baby was getting sleepy again, his head drooping against Jonathan's chest. Can I ask you something? When my father came to you with that contract, why didn't you call me? Why didn't you give me a chance to fight for you? Because I was scared, Evelyn admitted, tears streaming down her face now. Scared that you would choose him over me, over our baby? Scared that I would have to watch you make that choice and break my heart all over again? It was easier to leave and imagine you might have chosen us than to stay and know for sure that you wouldn't. I was a coward, Jonathan said. You were right about everything. I hid you from my world because I was afraid of my father's disapproval, afraid of losing my place in the company, afraid of being cut off from everything I thought defined me. And in being afraid, I lost the only thing that actually mattered. Riley's breathing had deepened. He was asleep again, his small body warm and trusting against Jonathan's chest. Jonathan had never felt anything more precious. When you left, I told myself you didn't love me enough to stay, that you chose the easy way out. I convinced myself it was your fault so I wouldn't have to face my own failures. Then I met Catherine 6 months later. She was everything my father wanted. Wealthy, connected, sophisticated, and most importantly, she understood that our marriage would be a partnership, not a love story. It seemed like the practical choice. Do you love her? Evelyn asked. Jonathan thought about Catherine. Beautiful, intelligent, capable Catherine, who looked perfect on his arm at charity galas and never asked him to be anything more than what he already was. No, I respect her, I enjoy her company, but I don't love her. She doesn't love me either. We both went into this with open eyes. Then why marry her? Because after you left, I stopped believing in love. I thought maybe my father was right, that love was a weakness, a distraction from building something that lasts. Looked down at the sleeping child in his arms. But looking at Riley, I know that's not true. This is what lasts. This is what matters. The elevator gave a sudden lurch, and they both grabbed for the railing. Riley startled awake and began crying. Evelyn quickly took him back, bouncing and soothing until the cries subsided into hiccups. A voice crackled over the intercom. We've almost got you. 10 more minutes, and we'll have the doors open.
Oh.
That was all the time Jonathan had left in this suspended moment. This bubble outside of real life where he could hold his son and talk to the woman he had never stopped loving. Evelyn, I need you to know something. I'm not going to walk away this time. I don't care what my father says. I don't care about the company. I don't care about any of it. I want to be Riley's father. I want to be in his life every single day. And I want another chance with you. Jonathan, I know I have to earn it. I know words mean nothing after what happened, but give me the chance to show you I've changed, that I can be the man you needed me to be. You're engaged to someone else. Not for long. Before Evelyn could respond, there was a grinding of metal, and the elevator lurched upward. The doors slid open to reveal the 25th floor, where a crowd had gathered. Maintenance workers, building security EMTs, and standing in the back, looking furious, was Richard Sterling. Jonathan stood slowly, carefully, still protecting Riley's head with his hand. He stepped out of the elevator with Evelyn right behind him. The EMTs immediately moved forward to check them over, but Jonathan's eyes were locked on his father. We need to talk, Richard said coldly. Now? Yes, Jonathan agreed. We do. The conference room on the 25th floor had been cleared for their use. Richard Sterling stood at the head of the table, his posture rigid with barely contained fury. Jonathan stood opposite him, while Evelyn sat in a chair near the door, Riley sleeping peacefully in her arms despite the tension crackling through the room. Have you lost your mind? Richard demanded. Security tells me you've been trapped in an elevator with some woman and a baby, and you've been declining my calls. That woman has a name, Jonathan said calmly. It's Evelyn. And that baby is your grandson, Riley. The color drained from Richard's face, then flooded back in an angry red. This is exactly what I paid to prevent. I handled this situation 2 years ago. I mean, when you offered Evelyn $2 million to disappear and abort my child? I did what was necessary to protect this family's interests. That woman was nothing, a gold digger trying to trap you with a pregnancy. She ripped up your check. Jonathan's voice was dangerously quiet. She raised our son alone for 18 months, working 2 jobs, finishing school, never asking me for a single penny because you made her believe I wouldn't want him. You wouldn't have. You were too young, too unfocused. You needed to commit to the company, not to some failed artist and her brat. The words hung in the air like poison. Evelyn stood abruptly, clutching Riley tighter. I should go. No, Jonathan said. Stay, please. She hesitated, then sat back down, but her face was pale. Jonathan turned back to his father. You're right about one thing. 2 years ago, I probably would have made the wrong choice. I probably would have convinced myself that the company mattered more than my own happiness, more than Evelyn, more than my child. Because that's what you taught me. That's what you've been teaching me my whole life. I taught you to be strong, to prioritize what matters. You taught me to be empty. The words came out with a certainty Jonathan had never felt before. You taught me that money is more important than people, that power is more important than love. The Sterling name is more important than actually being a good human being. And I believed you because I didn't know any better. Hey, this is absurd. You have responsibilities, commitments. You're engaged to Catherine Whitmore. Do you have any idea what breaking that engagement will do to our relationship with the Whitmore family? I don't care. Richard looked at his son as if he'd grown a second head. You don't care? Jonathan, the Whitmore merger alone is worth $300 million. I don't care. Jonathan pulled out his phone. Catherine deserves to hear this from me before it becomes gossip. He dialed, and Catherine answered on the second ring. Jonathan, where have you been? Your father's been calling me. I need to tell you something, and I need to do it now before I lose my nerve. I'm breaking off our engagement. There was a pause. Because of the woman in the elevator? You already know? Your father called me 20 minutes ago, ranting about some ex-girlfriend with a baby. I assume that's her? Her name is Evelyn. The baby is my son Riley, and yes, that's why. Another pause. Then Catherine laughed, a genuine sound of relief. Thank God. I was trying to figure out how to call it off without causing a corporate incident. Now it was Jonathan's turn to be surprised. What? Jonathan, we both know this was never a love match. It was a merger with wedding vows. But I met someone 3 months ago. Someone who makes me feel things I never thought I'd feel. I was going to tell you after the summer gala, because I didn't want to embarrass our families. She took a breath. Is this woman the one you told me about? The one you said you loved? Yes, then go get her. Be happy. I'll handle my family. You handle yours, Catherine. No apologies necessary. Just promise me you'll invite me to the real wedding, the one where you actually love the bride. Deal. He hung up to find both his father and Evelyn staring at him. Richard looked apoplectic. Evelyn looked hopeful, which was somehow more terrifying. You're making the biggest mistake of your life, Richard said. Dad, I'm fixing the biggest mistake of my life. Jonathan pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. He'd written it this morning before any of this happened, and had been too afraid to deliver it. But now holding it felt right. This is my resignation. Effective immediately. I'm done with Sterling Investments. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious. Find yourself another heir. I'm going to be a father to my son. I'll cut you off. No money, no connections, no safety net. You'll have nothing. I'll have everything that matters. Jonathan looked at Evelyn. If she let me try, Richard Sterling studied his son for a long moment. For the first time in Jonathan's memory, his father looked old, tired. You're a fool, he said finally. Just like your mother was. Mom left you because you chose business over family, Jonathan said quietly. She tried for 20 years to make you see what you were missing, and you never did. She died alone in that hospital because you were too busy closing a deal in Tokyo to say goodbye. Don't you see the pattern? Something flickered in Richard's eyes. Pain, maybe, or regret. But it was quickly buried under layers of practiced coldness. Get out. Both of you. Jonathan held out his hand to Evelyn. She looked at it for a long moment, then slowly placed her hand in his. Together, they walked out of the conference room, out of Sterling Tower, and into the bright afternoon sunlight of Manhattan. On the sidewalk, Evelyn finally spoke. What are you going to do now? No job, no money, no plan? I have a business degree from Harvard and 10 years of experience in investment management. I'll find work. He smiled at Riley, who had woken up and was watching him with curious eyes. Can I start by taking you both to lunch? I want to hear every single story about the last 18 months that I missed. Jonathan, this is crazy. You just walked away from everything. Oh no, I walked toward everything. He gently touched Riley's soft curls. I spent 2 years being miserable without you. I'm not wasting any more time. The next 3 months were the hardest of Jonathan's life, but also the most meaningful. He found an apartment in Brooklyn, modest compared to his penthouse, but cozy and real. He took a job as a financial consultant at a mid-sized firm. It's making a fraction of what he used to earn, but finding actual satisfaction in the work. More importantly, he showed up. Every single day, he visited Evelyn's mother at the hospital. Sitting with her when Evelyn needed a break, reading to her, holding her hand when the pain was bad. Margaret Chen accepted him with cautious warmth, and on one of her good days she told him, "It takes courage to choose love over comfort. Don't waste this second chance." Margaret passed away peacefully 6 weeks later. Jonathan held Evelyn as she cried and played with Riley so she could make funeral arrangements. He stood beside her at the service, not as the Sterling heir but as Jonathan. The man who loved her, the father of her child. Slowly, carefully, trust began to rebuild. Jonathan took Riley to the park every Saturday morning, learning to push a swing and build sandcastles and kiss scraped knees. He babysat when Evelyn needed time to paint, and he marveled at her talent, at the beautiful pieces she created. He met her friends, regular people who worked regular jobs, and laughed easily and never asked him about stock portfolios. He learned what mattered. 4 months after the elevator, Evelyn invited him to stay for dinner at her small apartment in Brooklyn. It had become a routine, these family dinners, but tonight felt different. Riley had already eaten and was playing with blocks on the floor. I talked to my landlord today, Evelyn said as she set the table. He's raising the rent. I might need to move somewhere cheaper. Move in with me, Jonathan said. The words came out before he could stop them. Evelyn turned to look at him. What? Move in with me. My apartment has 2 bedrooms. Riley could have his own room, space for all his toys. You could use the spare room as a studio. The rent's paid through the year. Jonathan, I'm not asking for anything you're not ready to give. Separate bedrooms, just roommates co-parenting. But I hate that you're struggling when I could help. Let me help. She studied him for a long moment. Okay, but not as roommates. She stepped closer to him. I've been watching you for 4 months. Watching you show up even when it was hard. Watching you be patient with Riley. Watching you choose us every single day even when you were tired or frustrated. I've been waiting for you to prove my doubts wrong, and you did. She cupped his face in her hands. You've proved that people can change, that love can be stronger than fear. I'm still scared, but I'm ready to try again. Jonathan kissed her then, gently, reverently, like a prayer answered. Riley, oblivious to the significance of the moment, continued stacking his blocks, humming a tuneless song. 1 year later. On a sunny Saturday in Central Park, Jonathan got down on one knee in front of Evelyn and Riley. They were at the boathouse where he and Evelyn had first talked about their dreams. Back when they were young and naive and thought love was simple. I did this all wrong the first time, he said, pulling out a simple diamond ring. I loved you, but I didn't fight for you. I let fear control my choices. But you and Riley taught me what real courage looks like. It's showing up. It's choosing love, even when it's hard. It's building something real instead of something that just looks good. He looked at Riley, now almost 3 years old, and watching with wide eyes. Buddy, is it okay if I ask your mom to marry me? Riley nodded seriously. Then you'll be my daddy forever? I'm already your daddy forever, but yes. Okay, you can ask her. Jonathan turned back to Evelyn, who was crying and laughing at the same time. Evelyn Chen, will you marry me? Not because it makes financial sense or looks good to society, but because I love you more than I thought it was possible to love anyone. And because I want to spend every day for the rest of my life being the man you and Riley deserve. Yes, she whispered. Yes, 1,000 times yes. He slid the ring onto her finger and stood, pulling her into his arms while Riley danced around them, chanting, Daddy! Mommy? Daddy? Mommy. In the distance, unnoticed by the happy family, Richard Sterling stood beside his car, watching. His driver had brought him here after following a hunch. He watched his son laugh with the woman he loved and the grandson Richard had tried to erase. He watched them be happy in a way he had never managed to be. For just a moment, Richard Sterling wondered if he had been wrong about everything. Then he got back in his car and drove away, alone as always. Leaving his son to build the life he had almost destroyed, Jonathan didn't see his father leave. He was too busy holding his future, his real future, the one that mattered. Evelyn's hand in his, Riley's arms around both their legs, and the knowledge that sometimes the best things in life come not from the elevators that rise to the top, but from the ones that get stuck in the middle, forcing you to see what you've been missing all along. 6 months later, they married in a small ceremony in Brooklyn with 50 guests. Riley was the ring bearer and took his job very seriously. Catherine Whitmore attended with her new boyfriend, a kind-hearted teacher who made her laugh. Evelyn's art was featured in a gallery show that same week, selling out in 3 days. Jonathan's consulting firm promoted him to partner. They bought a brownstone with a yard for Riley and a proper studio for Evelyn. They talked about having more children, about traveling, about all the dreams they had once shared and could finally build together. And sometimes, when Jonathan put Riley to bed and watched his son sleep, he thought about that elevator, about the moment when his entire life changed, about how the worst thing that could have happened, getting stuck between floors with the woman he had lost, turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to him because it forced him to choose. And this time, he chose right. Thank you for taking Thed time to listen to this story. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to click like. Share this story with your friends and family, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more meaningful stories.